Ah, look at the physique. Hey, look at the fit. Yeah, fill them in. Ooh, okay. So I heard about that one. Yep, that's the one I know. Flashbacks. Again, love this presentation, man. Kukaru Mountain, the ever-present. How cute, though. Hey. Shouldn't have come in, my friend. Sure does. Oh. Right. Connection. That's a big one. Or the big price that had to be paid. Okay. Right. Someone else died. I saw this. Oh, I didn't see this. I saw the other persons. Okay, so there's a direct connection to these people. Whoa. Quite the chain. Oh, it's not much, is it? Barely get to see her. Ooh. The lover that he mentioned. Yeah, the chain that it causes. Then it goes past. Ooh. Right. Half an hour per month, of course. Sure is. Big if, though. Yeah, but both Illumi and I know our brother Killua. Oh. Ah, that's the reaction I was expecting in the last episode. But imagine the cost for that, though. None of that matters to her. These are great shots. Yeah, so the cost of that must be immense. If the requests aren't fulfilled. But is Killua the type who's going to risk all those lives? Right? No, he's not. Alluka or Gon? I think it's Alluka. He's got something else in mind.
そうだよ。僕も大概だけど、君も相当だな。
Illumi is something else,
って
isn't
いう
he?
か、手順を間違ったら、キルアと俺とゴンだけじゃなくて、
Right, the
ゾロリック
chain.
の人間みんな死んじゃうんだけどね。
How far does that chain go?
何より僕はこのお願いの道連れは満単位だと思ってるから。
Everyone in the
あの
anime?
人かも死ぬよ。えって言ったのはそういうこと。
It's good to see this side of Hisoka. It's rare, but it's good. Always fun to see. Look at this. Now this is interesting. Is this just as simple as playtime? Or does this actually officially count?
俺がキルアに正しい手順でお願いするように頼むから。
The hell am I looking
その
at?
場に隠れて立ち会ってくれ。キルアが嫌だと言った場合と、いいよと言っていても嘘をついていると判断できた場合。
Ooh, Hisoka's got a choice to make here. Ooh.
アルカを始末してくれ。
Are they getting intimate?
戦闘能力はほとんどない。普通の子供だと思っていい。
I think this is just playtime.
どこから来たかがわからない。
Pearston, Cheeto, Potabai. Ooh, moral on 6th.
68票
Ooh,
投
68.
票率 89.7%。
I spiked up quite a bit.
おやおやおやおかしいですね。どうでしょうか。それだけで本当に大丈夫ですかね。違反者はライセンスの代わりに免罪符を得たんですよ。もうこれで何度危険しても怖いものはないっていうね。言い出したのはてめえだろうが。
This guy's good.
州の件はよ。僕がもしも手っ取り早く投票率をクリアしたいなら賛成してましたよ。
Yeah, he's
そう、こいつがとても嫌なのは
Let her
自
finish.
身が不利になりそうな提案をすんなり受け
He's
入れ
creating
自分から言い出したりもするところ。
obstacles that he knows he can get over anyways.
まるで邪魔や障害を楽しんでいる節さえある。
The funny thing is,
そ
oh,
んなとこだけネテロ会長に似てる。
speak of the devil.
それがとても嫌。
そこで提案します。
Of course you do. Go on then.
人全員で演説しましょうよ。ハンター会員みんなの前でネットの画面なんて通しちゃダメなんですよ。
Gotta see him in the flesh.
目を見て生の声を生の魂にぶつけるんです。前会長のためにも。
This guy, he's something
こ
else.
んなところが死ぬほど嫌いよ。パリスト。
They have a different dynamic, right? So, oh, yeah, it's playtime.
アルカにはいくつか親父たちは知らないルールがある。
Oh,
お兄ちゃんと俺を呼ぶのは
ah, okay.
キルアと呼ぶのは
Is
別の何か。
something else. The other. Let's call it that. The other. See, Killua has these insights because of the time he spent.
いいよ。
Oh, that's real, man. That right there is love. Oh, Killua must know. He must know there's cameras in there.
キルアったらすっかりお兄ちゃんに。
Sure is. He's the only one.
俺で3回おねだりクリアだ。
Ah.
パソコン楽勝じゃん。
Yeah, Miluki, back up.
ごめんよパパ。もうしないから。
That's charming.
もうあるかは準備
Interesting. See, I'm not sure.
あとはキルアがお願いすればいいだけ。
See, the face is hidden now.
ミルキもう一度確認だ。
あ、はい。
Again.
僕が知ってるルールは
Ooh,
5つ。
okay.
アルカからのおねだりを失敗してリセットされると、アルカのおねだり難易度は
Ah,
レ
okay.
ベル1に戻る。
I actually had that question
ア
in
ル
the
カ
last
にお願
episode.
いするには一番楽なタイミングだよ。2、アルカが誰かにおねだりしている途中で別の誰かにおねだりが移ることはない。だからアルカは執事に1個おねだりさせてからパパとママのところに
Ah, another question answered. Okay. Go on,
キ
Miluki.
ルアもそうしてたと思う。アルカがパパとママにおねだりしなかったのは そのためだよ。
But there could be other reasons, maybe. Let's see.
アルカが名前を知らない人物にはおねだりできない。5、同じ人間が連続してアルカにお願いすることはできない。
Okay, all of this is going to come into play, right? Of course it is. See, the face is hidden right now. There's some interesting stuff at play here. If any of that stuff actually counted as official requests.
キルアはお願いしない。
They certainly think so.
また何か甘いこと考えてんじゃないの？キルアがここでお願いしたら、その尻拭いは他の誰かがやるわけだから。
Exactly, but that's...
考えられぬ。まず友達を助けてから考えればいいことで。
That's not Killua, though.
パパ、見知らぬその他大勢を犠牲にして、助けられた友人はそれを喜ぶ。
Miluki, go on.
いいな。とか考えちゃうんだよ、あいつは。
He gets Killua, he understands
パパ
him.
だから。俺たちとは思考がかなりずれてるからね。だからイルニーに針で矯正させてたんでしょ。
Miluki, man. Taking center stage. He had a better understanding for Killua than Killua's parents.
親父、開けてくれ。
Still, the face is hidden.
ダメだ。お願いはそこにしろ。お前たちを外に出すことはできない。
How old is Alluka?
やっぱりどのルールも親父たちは知らない。俺たちやっぱり親子だね。
Is he about to show us how exactly? Or them, rather? Show them?
別のどこかから来た何か。そう言ったよね。
Oh,
俺も実は黒目の時のこいつを
the
何か
other.
って呼んでるんだ。何か30分以内にこの山から俺たちが一緒に出られなかった。
Whoa.
母親を殺せ。
Oh god, not this again. The strings. Ugh. Okay, Killua. He's got something going here.
30分以内に俺たち2人が一緒に山を
It's optional.
俺のほっぺにチューしろ。
Simple enough. Oh, that changes things again. Wait. Is he not giving orders? He didn't say anything like, can you, or, you know, I wish. Yeah, commands.
素晴らしいわ。成長したわね。
くそ、こんなやり方もできたのか。
Yeah, he's got different insight.
結果的に叶うお願いが一つなら選択を迫れるんだ。
Right, optional. So, of course, at the same time, he's trying to get Alluka out of here as well, right? Of course. Right? He hated that he forgot about her altogether. But now he remembers. And now it's all about getting her out of here as well, right? On top of the gone situation.
何かは壊すのは得意だけど、
Mm.
直すのは苦手だ。直すときは実際に触らないと。
Ah, so he's got to take her to gone. Ooh. Look at that. Isn't it interesting that no one's actually asked Alluka to heal something other than Killua, perhaps? Adorable, man. Listen, it's entirely possible that there's a connection there now, right, since then, with the other as well. The other sees how Killua treats Alluka, the host, I suppose.
30分以内に俺たち2人が一緒に山を降りられたら、俺のほっぺにチューしろ。
This is the sweetest, man. Oh.
ゴンもあるかも。俺が助ける。
Okay, so let's get into it, folks. I mean, 9 episodes left in the anime, right? And I get one of the most beautiful, one of the most wholesome relationships of the anime, right? This late in the game. But the thing is, the beautiful thing about this and Tagashi's writing and, setup and foreshadowing is that it's been there. It's been there since the beginning, right from the early stages of this anime, right? Perhaps a little bit after the Hunter exam arc, going into the rescue Killua arc, right? Now, Killua is the one who's doing the rescuing. But yeah, even back then, all it really took was the silhouette shot. And, to be fair to me, I knew right then and there that there is something special about that relationship, right? And again, that's a credit to Togashi's setup, his writing, foreshadowing, and all of that, because it's not just any simple silhouette shot. And, I'm not saying that, this is something impossible to pick up on. I'm assuming that this is something that's quite common, right? For all, fans of Hunter x Hunter to pick up on. More common than not, I'd say. Right, because I'm assuming, much like myself, many looked at the silhouette and many understood the dynamics of the Zoldyck clan, right, and how they are with each other, even though it's not the conventional depiction of love. Perhaps it might even seem twisted in many cases, and it is twisted in many cases. And once again, you see almost a delusional level of understanding of that love you see through Illumi. I mean, there's one of the funniest moments of the entire anime taking place here, right? The Hisoka and Illumi moment, as both of them are kind of caught off guard by the other's assumption, right? I mean, that whole scene, it's an absolute treat. I'm sure for many of the other, Hisoka, Illumi fans out there, much like myself, that's an absolute treat. It really is, isn't it? Above all, one of the major components of this episode is actually the depiction of bonds, and not just the traditional bonds, all kinds of bonds. There's a bond there, there's a brotherhood, there's a bromance there between Hisoka and Illumi, and it's been there, again, since day one, right? The Hunter exam arc. And Illumi goes to Hisoka for this, right? I mean, of course, there's a lot of moving pieces. It's quite a... it's an interesting request of Hisoka. And ultimately, yes, indeed, he is recruiting him. It's gotten to that point now, right? It's beyond recruitment. He's on board now, right? Because he's a part of this. He could be a part of this alongside tens and thousands of others, right? Essentially, the entire cast of the anime. Through proximity, through association, through time spent, and all of that, right? But listen, let's put it up there. It's not going to get to that, is it? It's just not. Right? Let's be realistic about it. And of course, I'll come back to Hisoka and Illumi, but, going back to the silhouette shot and just immediately understanding and knowing that, okay, there's something special there, right? And yeah, look at that. I see that really special connection, that bond, right? A unique bond, quite a rare bond, because no one else has this bond with Alluka, right? And, possibly and potentially the other as well, right? So I think there's a lot of interesting things at play here. They made it really quite clear that Killua has certain insights, right? Insights only he could have based on the time spent with his younger sister. Because for the rest of the Zoldyck clan, it's always been about studying Alluka, right? Experimentation, again and again, being thorough, giving up lives of these butlers. No, again, I know it's morbid, but from a certain perspective, they had to be sure, right? And again, for that reason, they locked him in, in some kind of holding cage, or not cage, holding room, holding cell, but, inside of Kukuru Mountain, deep within Kukuru Mountain. Though, by the end of it, you see that Alluka is free of that holding cell, right? And, the last thing, that beautiful frame of the kiss on the cheek and Killua just putting it out there. I'm going to save both Gon and Alluka, right? It makes it really quite clear. It's not about just going out there to save Gon. It's not. This is equally as big as saving Gon. It means equally as much, perhaps even more. Listen, I know this is new, Alluka and Killua together, physically, and actually seeing them in the same, frame, and just the same scenes, and just the loving relationship that they have, right? It's just so beautiful to see just how Alluka just lights up. Everything else does not matter. It could be months for Alluka in that place, in the holding room or cell, but the moment Killua showed up, none of that mattered. And it's just incredibly beautiful to see. It really is. To see how much Killua means to Alluka, right? And again, I think that's a major component of some of the really interesting new information that comes out of this. And Killua's really interesting dynamic with Alluka, and also, like I said earlier, this other thing, this other entity, right? The other, I'll call it. Killua refers to this entity as something. But yeah, for the rest of them, it's always been out of sight, out of mind, this abomination, something to be studied, something to be removed from the day-to-day. So of course, there's levels to this in terms of really truly understanding Alluka and Alluka's abilities, or the others' abilities that come into play. But again, to be fair to the rest of the Zoldycks, they've put together quite a bit. Anyways, again, they did a lot of experiments, a lot of case studies, live case studies using actual people, just tossing their lives out the window to get answers to all of this, to put something together. And you see, at one point, Silva Zoldyck actually asked Miluki to, tell him the rules again, to repeat the rules again. Now, at first I thought, do I really need this? But, immediately, it's good that I got that, because there's some new information that came out of that. And maybe, Silva's looking at it as, okay, maybe Miluki is still trying to hide something from me. Maybe he'll slip up, right? Maybe something along those lines. But again, it's for the audience as well. And, now 2 episodes in, they've really reiterated a lot of the rules, a lot of them. Right? Of course, there's a bit of repetition, and you can kind of overlook it because a lot of it is done through the lens of bringing Hisoka up to speed as well in the beginning of the episode. But it's not a bad idea to get that information again, because it's not that complicated. But again, there's a bunch of rules that have to be kept in mind, and I think Togashi is going into such detail about these rules because, of course, it is going to come into play really quite soon, I suppose, right? Because, Gon is going to come into play, because it appears that, or not appears, it's essentially confirmed that Alluka, or the other, has to be in really close proximity. Essentially, you have to be touching the person that you are trying to heal, right? So yeah, it's good setup. That allows a different setting for Alluka, right? And it potentially allows Killua to introduce his sibling, someone he cares for most in this world. I believe that is, I think that is the case here. Listen, he cares so much for Gon. He does. He simply does, right? He's been ready to put his life on the line for Gon on multiple occasions. But I think this bond right here, the bond of these 2 siblings, I think it just immediately means a bit more than, the connection between Gon and Killua. And listen, I'm not diminishing that at all. I love that bond. But to me, it's so clear that bond means a bit more. Killua and Alluka, right? That's his sister. And it's a sister that's been shunned as well, right? So, Killua's empathetic nature in that sense really is highlighted once again. So yeah, to finish up that point, I think the setup has always been there. To me, it's been really quite clear that there is someone in Killua's life that he cares for most, or cares for quite a bit. Anytime I brought up that idea of, Gon and Killua, and, Gon being the one person Killua cares for most, I almost always brought up the idea, the potential of the sibling that he's holding hands with in that silhouette shot, right? This elusive sibling that I finally get to meet. And, Alluka is so lovely. Listen, I know, maybe you could say it's not the most compelling character, but, listen, sometimes not every single character has to be multi-layered and incredibly compelling. I got plenty of those. Sometimes it's more than okay to have a character like Alluka, right? Just wholesome and cute. And yes, there's some, okay, let's not get it twisted. There's still some interesting elements to Alluka, right? Just by design, by build-up and everything. A lot of things at play, even identity, right? See, to Killua, that's just his younger sister, right? But to the others, it's a thing. It's a brother. So of course there's the gender identity stuff at play here, and then you've got this other being, entity, the other that's a part of Alluka. But there's some really fascinating information, exposition in this one, again through Killua's really significant insight, right? Rare insight. Essentially, Killua also distinguishes Alluka from this being, right? Something, as he refers to it. But I find it easier to just call it the other. But that being said, even though there is a distinction between Alluka and the other, I think there's enough here to even speculate that, okay, it is possible, like I said during the reaction portion near the conclusion of the episode, it is possible that even this being, this other entity, has taken to Killua, right? Over the years, it must have, experienced and seen just how Killua treats Alluka, right? And listen, ultimately, this is the host. This is that being's host. This is the other's host, Alluka, that is. So, to see and feel and receive that treatment over the years, the gentle, caring love of a sibling, I think it is a possibility that the other being has also taken to Killua. Perhaps not as much as Alluka, but to an extent that, okay, it's a bit more receptive and open to Killua, right? Only Killua, specifically, I'd say. So I think, because of that, there's some interesting things at play here inside of the playroom, actually, right? And it's even set up in that manner, right? That it's almost kind of like a play date. Almost immediately, Killua takes his position across Alluka, and, Alluka really, really quite, happy and really quite excited to just have a bit of fun with her sibling, her brother, right? And to me, just through the depiction of Alluka's expressions and the voice acting and the drawing itself of the facial expressions, to me, as you'll remember, my immediate thought is, hold on, okay, is this just like a really wholesome, fun play session? Right? It didn't feel like some of the things from the flashback from the last episode, right? The requests that are being made, those really felt quite official. This almost immediately felt a bit more wholesome, right? That it is just those two having fun. So up until a certain point, that was my understanding of that scene, that this is not official requests. This is just them two having fun, right? A good time. Just, playtime, essentially. But it also kind of brings in Alluka's age into question, I suppose. Just I'm not sure how old Alluka is at this point, but I think it's fair to say that Alluka's still a little bit childish, or almost still behaves like a toddler. I mean, I don't know if you can call Alluka a toddler at this point, but there's that really innocent, childish nature about Alluka even now. But yeah, going back to the play session and, the internal monologue through Killua, he confirms a few things, things that the others do not know, the other Zoldycks, that is. So Killua claims that the one that calls me brother is the real Alluka. So essentially, I even got an answer to my speculation, right? That it is essentially just loving requests straight from Alluka, from a sibling, right? Alluka just wanted to play. Because every single one of those requests, she's, referring to Killua as brother. So, that's pretty clear at that point. But see, that's where, the juicy stuff comes in. I thought I had an understanding for that. Then, all of a sudden, and you see it's really quite clever, they keep the face hidden for quite a prolonged amount of time. And then, yeah. I see, the black smoke, the black aura almost take over, and then Alluka turns her head, and it's the black eyes, it's the other, right? So that, all of a sudden almost had me just back to square one, because now it's clear that there is something else at play now, something else going on here that is, again, unique to Killua, right? Because, again, these are not requests being made by the other. Those are just, again, play session requests by Alluka, again, as confirmed by Killua, that, Alluka calls me brother, and that the one that calls me Killua is something else, right? That it's the other. And again, through Miluki's updates of the rules, there's other confirmations, such as, Alluka needing a name before making a request. So I guess, all three of them kind of overlook that Alluka is saying brother rather than Killua. But I mean, yeah, I think it's a given that Alluka knows Killua's name, right? That's just, they're siblings. So I suppose I'm being a little bit harsh, a little bit picky, nitpicky about the Zoldycks kind of, overlooking that. They didn't really overlook it. So if you look at from their perspective, Miluki, Silva, and, Miluki's mom and Killua's mom, their mom, they are clearly under the impression that, okay, the three requests have been made, so Killua should be able to make a wish now, but he's not doing it, right? And he does it, and at that point they get something new in terms of the rules. They had no idea. Miluki is just kind of shocked at the moment to find out that, oh, you could do like this optional thing, right? You can structure it in that manner. So they do kind of learn something new. Silva does learn something new, right? But, I think Silva is, I don't know, intelligent enough to know, okay, if that's the case, there must be other things that only Killua understands about Alluka. I mean, listen, these are really intelligent people. People like Silva and Zeno and, Illumi as well. I mean, ultimately, there's essentially a confirmation. It's all but confirmed that indeed it was actually Silva that asked Illumi to install a needle, right? To introduce the needle. But, going back to that moment of, the other something showing up anyways, right? The black eyes. There, things got really quite interesting. But, also almost immediately, as also confirmed by a character, his mom, who's actually, ultimately quite proud, much like how she was proud that he stabbed her in the face the last time he, escaped. Or, the last time he kind of just walked out because he made a deal with Silva, and, that deal's kind of backfired on Silva since then, or it didn't really go according to plan or his expectation, I suppose, right? The needle and all of that and how things might turn out with his friend gone. But, Killua's mom specified, how can you give such a command? And right before she said that, I kind of had the same train of thought. This is not the same as, asking, can you? Or, saying, I wish. I guess no one's actually said that specifically, but you get my point, right? He's actually telling telling something, right? These, immediate plans, right? The optional structure of it. If this doesn't happen, then do this, right? If it does happen, then do this, right? Ultimately, it ends on a really sweet kiss on the cheek, right? In one of the most wholesome moments of the entire anime. And listen, man, ultimately, I just love this so much for Killua. So much. So, of course, I think one thing that's made clear is that Killua has a different relationship with the other as well, something else, the black-eyed entity. I feel like that's pretty clear in this episode, right? That it behaves in a bit of a different manner, in a bit of a different capacity if it's Killua, right? Because again, these are orders, commands, and it complies. Right? And maybe it is possible that it goes back to that idea, that speculation about, okay, maybe even the entity has taken to Killua. Because listen, ultimately Killua's treatment of Alluka is so unique in comparison to everyone else. This is the only one that cares for Alluka, right? And respects Alluka and everything about Alluka and Alluka's identity and feelings and all of that. And, before I forget, it's such a lovely character design, isn't it? Just the design itself, it just immediately just brings out a smile. I'm sure that's the case for many of you. Just looking at that character, I just have so much, joy. And I really do believe that, effective character design is able to do that. It just did. It did that again for me, just by looking at Alluka. Right? I mean, it certainly did that in the last episode, right? The toddler Alluka, just incredibly wholesome and cute. But here, a little bit older, still just as wholesome and cute. The voice acting again, and just, Killua and Alluka together. It's just incredibly wholesome. It just is. I don't see how anyone could be annoyed by any of this, But going back to my point about Killua's treatment of Alluka, that loving, caring nature as a sibling, right? You see that Alluka feels safe, immediately safe and happy, that nothing else matters anymore. Who cares? As long as my brother's here now, right? And that hug that lingers and immediately she said, I missed your scent, right? Those are bonds. Those are bonds right there. It's a beautiful depiction of bonds. And also, if you are to look at this something as, maybe a traditional possession, I'm guessing it's not a traditional, possession. There's always stories about this kind of thing, right? Sometimes they're a bit more receptive to certain people, right? Maybe if you look at examples or just, stories of house possessions, perhaps, right? A spirit or something that kind of lingers or left behind, be it film or any other medium. And of course, there's always, real life stories, right? But again, I'm of the opinion that I need to see something like that for myself, experience it for myself to really truly kind of believe in it. But listen. Should I get into this? I don't know. It's a little bit personal. My mom had an experience, and I do not believe my mom is lying about that experience, right? This happened years and years ago, decades ago at this point. But, she tells us a story, and, my dad as well, actually. But my mom actually had more of a physical, experience. I'll kind of leave it at that. But, she certainly felt that, she's had a run-in, right? But yeah, my dad, he's also, he's heard things. Let's leave it at that. But listen, I don't want to get into that too much. Again, it is a little bit personal, but let's get back to the point. In these types of stories of possession, right, be it house possession, sometimes you do kind of get that idea, that notion of, okay, this spirit is much more friendly towards the people that live there, that have been there for years. It's kind of taken to them. It's kind of almost taken them under its wing, kind of, right? So maybe something similar is at play here as well, right? That's my, I'd say that's probably my speculation at this point, and I'm really kind of leaning towards that it has taken to Killua as well, right? It is receptive to Killua. Perhaps maybe not, as loving as Alluka is to Killua, but again, it understands Alluka is its host, and this is how Alluka feels around this sibling, this person, right? So, as of this point, even though in the last episode, the rest of the Zoldycks have really almost demonized, or tried to demonize this as just this thing, right? That should be just, put away. Should be, again, out of sight, out of mind. But yeah, to finish up on that point, I think ultimately it is kind of contagious, isn't it? Perhaps, this being, this entity, this other, this something, just kind of feels a bit of that love as well, right? Given that it is, in that body, right? Alluka being the host, and, Killua being that connection, that loving bond. Again, it must feel some of the same feelings as Alluka. How everything just lights up in Killua's presence. Everything is fine in Killua's presence, because that's the only thing that matters. My brother is here now. So that's my take on the matter, that Killua does have a bit of a unique relationship with this being as well, in addition to Alluka. And, that's a given, of course. That's been a given for a long time, since the silhouette shot. Now, before I, move on to this idea of Killua taking this massive risk and understanding this massive risk, of course, just like Illumi understands how big this risk is, of course, Killua also understands the connotations of it and the lives, tens and thousands of lives that are going to be at risk by, making a request or making a wish such as this, right, to save Gon or bring him back from the brink and all of that, right, and the follow-up requests, and, again, Killua's approach and how Illumi and Miluki both think Killua is going to approach there. So, another thing I really liked here is the really unique relationships within the Zoldyck clan, right? You've got Miluki and Killua, you've got Illumi and Killua, you've got Alluka and Killua, right? Again, Killua being one of the constants because he's one of the major characters of this anime. All of them are different. You see Miluki actually takes center stage. He has insight, much like how Killua has insight on Alluka because of time spent together. Miluki has, similar insight on Killua. They made it really quite clear that they do, yes, they clash quite a bit. I mean, really quite a bit. But they also have some things that they have in common, right? Both are gamers. They grew up on gaming. Hell, at one point, the Miluki and Killua relationship really reminded me of my own, relationships with my younger brothers, right? The good, the good stuff, like, gaming together and being into all that kind of stuff, together, pop culture, and, all that stuff. And by pop culture, I just mean, film and, television and gaming, all of that. So yeah, Miluki and Killua also have a really unique relationship. And Miluki, because of that, has unique insight that neither one of the parents had about Killua, right? Miluki completely understood that no, Killua could never actually take that approach of endangering, people, and that many people at that, right? I mean, he thinks, it's because Killua is essentially stupid or he's soft, he's not able to, be strong about these kind of things. And listen, he brought up this point or similar point to this a long time ago to Xenozoldyck, Miluki really firmly believed even back then that, listen, even if you really truly think he's the next in line, he should be the next head of the Zoldyck clan, there's some things about him that I know, right? Ultimately, from Miluki's perspective, Killua's a little bit too nice in comparison to the rest of the Zoldicks, right? But then, of course, I get to see a really beautiful side of Killua, right? From that point on, and especially really quite recently as well throughout the Chimera Ant arc, right? Be it with Palm, be it with Ikalgo, and some of these other characters that he came across, and now I get to see it with Alluka. And as you know, I've always had a soft spot for Miluki, right? And yeah, he's been used for comic relief quite a bit, but at the end of the day, he's still a Zoldyck, and he does excel in some things. He just does. He's again able to provide really significant insight in this case to his dad, to Silva, right? So maybe it's a good thing he's able to get in his good books, because the moment he mentioned the computer and yeah, it's maybe not that bad, or it wasn't really that bad, you see Silva is that close to going off on him, right? Because again, it's an incredible risk that he did take. But yeah, speaking of risk, he understands that, his friend, and by his friend, I mean Gon, do you really think he'd be happy to know that, Killua actually risked that many lives, right? Or that many lives are sacrificed to bring him back. But because of Miluki's interesting point, now I'm kind of beginning to think that given all the, the connotations and all the, moving pieces about this ability, though I do believe Killua does feel that he can figure something out here. Again, because he wants to save both Gon and Alluka. And, how exactly do you save Alluka? Does that entail removing this entity from Alluka's body? Does it mean suppressing this entity, this being forever? Or does it even mean that you just kind of learn to live with this entity, but, you kind of really diminish the risky elements of it, right, somehow? But yeah, at this point, Miluki's got me thinking, right? He certainly believes or thinks that, Killua's friend is not going to like that idea that, tens of thousands of lives could have been sacrificed or might have been sacrificed to bring him back. Now I'm thinking that Killua might not even want Gon to know, if indeed it comes off and Gon is brought back. But then beyond that, if you look at it just from Killua's perspective, is Killua the type of person who wants Gon to think that, he owes Gon his life? That, without me, you would have been gone for good? I don't know, man. The last few episodes, I find myself saying things like, that doesn't sound like Killua to me. That's not the Killua I know. So, it's beautiful writing, isn't it? That a lot of these things really have you thinking about Killua's nature. And is this really, truly something the Killua I've come to love and adore over the past, 139 episodes could do or would do? I mean, hell, go back to Green Island. He didn't really even want Gon to see his hand, even though Gon knew, of course, his hand's going to be a wreck, right? But even something like that, he's trying to hide his hand because he doesn't want Gon to feel guilty about it, right? So he made it seem like it's out of sight, out of mind. But listen, there's a bridge to cross, quite a long bridge to cross here before, Gon can be brought back, right, or rescued. And, beyond that, is it something that is going to be acceptable? Because it has to make a lot of sense. I know I said that before, but listen, folks, it's going to have to make a lot of sense, right? The approach and how any potential return for Gon is handled from that point on. Because, just quite recently, I felt that there's something really dicey that's been introduced, and that's a return of Kite, or at least Kite's reincarnation, or his spirit, or his soul living on, right? Of course, I'm still not sure about that aspect either. So I have to let it play out. You just kind of have to let a lot of these things play out and then kind of, assess it. But even if you do approach it from that idea, that perspective of, okay, Killua is going to do this thing, he's going to make that wish, and he's going to try his best to make these requests, or fulfill these requests and all of that. Listen, if Killua is to die in a hypothetical because of this, the person he loves most is Alluka, I believe. Gon is right there as well, but ultimately I think the immediate person he cares for most is Alluka. The one he loves most is Alluka. So Alluka, yeah, if that happens, again, in a what if situation, if Killua is to die, that means Alluka is going to die as well. But then that's a problem, isn't it? Because Alluka is the host for the other, for this being, right? So does that almost kind of like cancel out, right? Does that automatically just kind of move to the next person because of some kind of exemption, right? That, the host cannot die, because if the host dies, how exactly is this being going to live on, right? Is it as simple as just moving on to someone else, or it really, really, truly needs Alluka specifically, right? I mean, it's still quite a mystery. I mean, it's only early days. I only found out recently about the whole thing, but yeah, how exactly did this happen? This possession, this being attaching itself, making Alluka the host. The fact that Alluka is still around, the family keeps him around. You see, the mom's reaction to Killua and Alluka together. This is a biological Zoldyck, and Illumi essentially said as much. There's another Zoldyck brother. I know he could have been talking about an adopted brother, but at this point, it really truly feels like it's a biological Zoldyck. But how exactly did this happen? Was Alluka born like this, or did this being, this other, attach itself after birth? But the one thing I do know is that Silva certainly believes that this thing is just not from here, right? So, there is something in that in terms of intrigue and mystery, right? Again, there's only 9 episodes left, so I'm not sure how much more I'll learn about, Alluka's condition and, this being, the other being attached to Alluka. I guess I'll have to, find out in the manga, right? But, again, that's just me assuming that it does get into that in the manga as well. I'm not even sure how much story is covered in the manga. I'm guessing there's quite a bit, right? It's been years since the end of the anime. But again, I know about Togashi's, health condition, and that, he doesn't get to do as much as he would like. But I'm sure there's still enough at this point, a decent amount. But I think I've been told that it's not enough for the anime to come back or to go into production again, right? To really allocate resources to that anime production again. Not just yet, perhaps. Maybe in a couple of years. And the thing is, I actually know people that are holding off for that, right? That they're choosing not to go into the manga because they are hoping that in a couple of years, the anime could return, right? So, listen, I'm not going to lie. I've had that thought as well. I have. But, at this point, I think I am leaning towards, getting into the manga as well. Again, not immediately. I think it's important to take a bit of a break after 148 and then, come back to it at some point. But, also let's kind of get into the mechanics of it real quick, right? In terms of the rules, the established rules that, Miluki knows about, and then he tells Silva once again, right? This idea of, the same person cannot make a wish twice in a row, right? So again, it didn't really feel like a wish, did it? More so Killua just giving a command. So, I mean, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and assume maybe that didn't really apply to Killua, that, his wish is still possible, right? But again, that's the thing, the term I'm using there, maybe Killua doesn't even have to look at it like that. Because again, like I said earlier, there's enough there now, I think, to speculate about Killua having a different connection, a different relationship with this other being's abilities, right? I think that's one of the things that this episode has really kind of shined a light on, right? Both for me as an audience member and perhaps for a couple of the other Zoldycks as well. I think Silva Zoldyck must be thinking that, okay, there's more to this than meets the eye, especially if Killua is a part of it. So no, I don't think that Killua is going to be risking tens of thousands of lives. I'm sure he's got something in mind, right? He's clever. He's all about coming up with plans and all of that and thinking ahead, thinking steps ahead, much like Periston in this episode, right? Listen, I'll be honest, folks. I love that segment. I love that subplot, the election plot. But this might be the first time it kind of felt like it was just kind of, I don't know, taped on, because the stuff that they do touch up on in terms of the election stuff, it didn't feel like it was substantial enough. I feel like it didn't really move the needle enough, right? It didn't move that plot forward enough. But again, that being said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing Periston again. I enjoyed seeing Cheadle, trying to read Periston and his move. But listen, I think at this point it's clear that this person, Periston, this fellow, yeah, he's thinking so far ahead of anyone, right? He's got plans upon plans, and then he's got tangents that he can go on. And this idea of taking on obstacles by choice, right? To almost kind of seem unbiased. Yet he knows that he can take care of those obstacles anyways, right? He can track back, he can get out of that hole that he digs himself into by choice. And Cheadle understands this, right? To me, it's kind of reminiscent of, former football players, right? Look at Jamie Carragher, for an example, former Liverpool player. Now he does commentary quite a bit in England. I feel like he's a great example of someone who kind of almost does too much to not appear biased. I feel like you have to strike that balance, right? As a former player for a team that's in commentary now, or is a pundit now, right? I feel like sometimes, and it's not just Jamie Carragher, a lot of these former players, Gary Neville, there's others that just do a little too much, right? A little too extra to seem like they're not biased. And all of us fans can just clock it. It's like, oh, come on, man, you're doing too much now, right? I feel like it's a bit of that at play as well, but Pearson is really quite clever about it. And one thing, I almost said it, but the scene happened almost immediately. I was going to make that connection with the chairman because, I've made that connection before, or I've made that point before that, the chairman might have actually wanted this, this friction to go against the grain, someone that challenges him, right? Not a yes man. The chairman is certainly also the type that likes an obstacle or two, right? To keep things interesting. And Cheadle pretty much confirms it. I see that lovely shot of the chairman again, the late chairman, the legend. So yeah, it's great to see Pearson and the Zodiacs, the rest of the Zodiacs, though Jing's still missing. But I'm really hoping that, really soon I get another episode that's just entirely or mostly focused on that. That aspect of it, the election aspect of it, let it build over the span of an episode. But, Pearson is the type of character that I describe as someone who has screen presence, right? If it's live action, I'm thinking of someone like Charles Dance from Game of Thrones, or, someone that has stage presence, that kind of thing. I know it's animation, but you can still establish screen presence in animation, right? Again, through the drawing, through the performance of the voice actors, right? Integral to all of this, and I think they've executed that to perfection, because I do feel that Pearson just hijacks the scene, he hijacks the screen, he hijacks the situation, right? Anytime he speaks, I kind of perk up. I'm like, all right, let me see this guy's next, move, the next thing he has to say, right? And the flow, the cadence of his delivery is just so engaging as well, right? It almost has this feeling of him almost constantly trolling, but on like a professional level, right? But of course, there's some interesting setup there. Now he wants to be in front of an audience. He wants all of them to be in front of an audience, to be there in the flesh to talk about this. And Cheadle, it gets something really quite intense out of Cheadle, right? She straight up just said, this is why I hate your guts, right? Of course, this is in Pearson's favor to get in front of that crowd, right? He's a showman. He is. Right? He's the golden boy. He's a showman, and once again, his numbers are still holding strong. They keep going up. Again, not quite enough yet, especially because the turnout's not quite there yet. But yeah, that's exciting setup because there could be a lot of really familiar faces in that crowd. So to see their reactions to this, to see them kind of maybe talk to each other, come across each other, random characters that have never been together before, that kind of thing. It could be cool. It could be cool to see all of these people in the same place. But let's shift the perspective to Hisoka and Illumi in that High Rollers aircraft, right? It's a bit of a party in there. Everyone's dressed all nice, though Hisoka probably sticks out like a sore thumb because, Illumi kind of almost fits in, but it's not quite like a suit and tie or, a suit and bow tie. But yeah, it's good to see Illumi switch it up a bit as well, in terms of the fit. But, that scene, that back and forth, a lot of it is filling Hisoka in on the details of it all and how it actually, if it could affect him quite a bit. And, again, I get to see that side of Hisoka. You don't get to see that all that often, right? Him kind of letting his guard down, him really opening up, right? And it is Illumi. That's one of his friends. I think you can say that at this point. It's a really unique friendship. But, yeah, I think there is a bit of a bromance there. There's a really unique connection there. There just is, right? Hell, there's a really strange moment that happens. I actually thought maybe that's a depiction of them being intimate, even, possibly. I don't know. Other than that just felt so bizarre and out of place, didn't it? At the least, they're having some kind of moment, right? Removed from everyone else. But of course, I mentioned that really fun moment of them, kind of clashing in their beliefs at that point, right? About the most loved one and how it could turn out. You see Hisoka's concern that even if Gon is saved somehow because of this, he could end up dying anyways, because if Killua doesn't, fulfill those requests, from Hisoka's perspective, it's gone, isn't it? And it's interesting, isn't it, that Hisoka does understand or feel that, it is gone. the person that Killua is the closest to or loves most, right? So he, of course, he doesn't know about Alluka, and of course, even Illumi doesn't clearly understand that relationship either. Alluka and Killua, because Illumi thought, yeah, it'll be me immediately, me and Killua. And you get that moment of Hisoka saying, listen, I've got my issues, but you're right up there. You're right up there, pal. I just really love that honest appraisal that Hisoka gives of himself and Illumi, that there is this understanding there. But, that's also the thing I meant about a twisted sense of love. Listen, Illumi actually might legitimately think, actually he does think, yes, from one perspective it seems delusional, and you see it certainly got a reaction out of Hisoka. But, Illumi certainly believes that, yeah, I'm the one that Killua, has spent most time with, and then, beyond that, cares for most or loves most, because he believes that maybe helping Killua in that capacity, training him and, inserting the needle and, helping him become the assassin that he is today, that's love, perhaps, for Illumi, right? Caring for Killua in that capacity, in that manner. Again, as crazy as it might seem, right? But that's the Zoldycks. That's the Zoldycks. Their idea of love is quite unique from person to person even. But another thing I really appreciate about that scene, that segment of Hisoka and Illumi, is just the presentation of it. I mean, the angles that you see here, right? The photography, the storyboarding and all of that, beautiful angles of these guys, Hisoka and Illumi. I mean, these two are elegant. They're just really cool to look at. There's a one shot of Hisoka's physique from behind. I know Hisoka's got a physique on him. I'm sure Illumi does as well. But yeah, it's really cool. A lot of really cool shots of Illumi as well. A lot of pan shots, a lot of close up of his face and those eyes. Those really unique eyes, almost dead eyes essentially. A lot of beautiful wide shots of the aircraft and the city, right? It's a great setting. It really is. And it's actually quite reminiscent of Gon and Killua from the early days of this anime, right? On the aircraft on multiple occasions. Right? I mean, there is a parallel there to be drawn. Hisoka and Illumi, Gon and Killua. Yes, of course, there's a lot of differences there, but, it's there. There is something there. Much like how, I felt that maybe I'm getting a glimpse into the future as Gon and Killua are looking at the late chairman and Zeno back in the Chimera Ant arc. But yeah, at some point, Hisoka is going to have to decide if he wants Gon to survive this, right? Or does he not risk the whole thing because, of his own attachment to all of this in that long chain of tens of thousands? But again, Hisoka doesn't know yet about the whole, future potential of Gon already being used up. See, the thing is, the person I saw in episode 131, adult Gon, future Gon, Hisoka had that in mind. He expected something like that. And that's been one of the reasons he's been so excited about this, about Gon, right? The potential of Gon, right? But, Hisoka doesn't know that's gone. That's been used up. That future potential has been used and discarded. But yeah, I think I'll leave it off on that, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or full opacity or timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page and, potentially supporting the channel as well in the process of it. Links in the description and the pinned comment, also links to social media. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.